there's a lot of stories where the guys who sort of spark these things or become the figureheads of these revolutions, and who do maintain their fervor, do fall out with the people that they have their revolutions with. One of the people that I think of specifically from that perspective is Robespierre. Very famously, he was known as the Incorruptible because he helped with the overthrow of the lordly nobility in France, and then he was the head of the terror and the guillotining and all of that stuff. But the whole time he spoke about. Apparently, he was very well respected for his debates and his ability to carry persuasively.
He French?
Yeah. So he was, he was very Maximilian Robespierre. Yeah, he was very good at carrying debate and at convincing people to do things, and he remained absolutely steadfastly, down the narrow path of what the revolution had been about. Kind of making sure that anybody who was standing in the way of the poor would be put to death. He was. This was his thing. But he was also at the same time not a very well liked person. He didn't have a sense of humor, and apparently he was altogether too serious. And people didn't really like him as an individual. They would say, he's really very clever, and his debates are perfect. Like he'll debate you into a corner and absolutely crush you, but just not a nice man, not a fun person. And ultimately, we know what happened to him. His own fellow revolutionaries eventually turned on him. And they had him executed under the guillotine.
Oh, my word.
Look, by the time he was guillotined, bringing an end to the terror, some 18,000 people had been guillotined.
Wow.
That's the official number, right? So 18,000 people had been guillotined. They say another 10,000 people had died in prison awaiting trial. Another 25,000 people had been executed kind of ad hoc around the country.
Sure.
So you took like this massive number of people that had been executed, and largely, on his sort of say-so, because he kept introducing new measures to make it more and more easy for people to have their neighbor, kind of brought before the guillotine. There was a court that he specifically set up where it was any French citizen can arrest someone and have them charged in front of this particular court, and that court could only rule two things: either freedom or death.
Wow.
So he was like a rabid guy, and then ultimately his people turn on him. He gets sick for a month. He ends up staying at home, and this allows the parliament to start going, you know what, actually, bit of a cock, that guy.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. Let's be serious. Bit of a knob.
Yeah. Power dynamics are fascinating. It makes me think of Shaka Zulu as well, He united the Zulu tribes under one thing.
He's more
like
rather less than revolutionary. He's more like sort of tyrannical, more Gaddafi than.
Yeah, bit of a William Wallace of the Zulus.
If William Wallace was fighting against smaller tribes, this is one of the things that people don't talk about Shaka. Was he united a great number of separate tribes because he was a great leader and he wasn't like a revolutionary or trying to overthrow a tyrannical government, or he was very much the tyrannical government. But yeah, so I want to just jump back to Robespierre. So because actually I've got a fact about him. So when they guillotined him, what happened is the parliament eventually they said, all right, no, enough of this guy, and they put out arrest warrants for him and a couple of his mates, and they said, listen, enough's enough. And Robespierre heard about this, and he and his mates fled, and they went to a place called the Hôtel de Ville, and they were in the Hôtel de Ville, and the parliamentary forces heard about where they were and kind of showed up at the Hôtel de Ville, and they raided it. Nobody's really 100% certain what happened in the Hôtel de Ville, but Robespierre and his mates were all arrested, and they were quickly kind of ushered into a room, and they were very quickly condemned to death. And the next day, they were taken out to be executed.
Wow!
And my fact is that Robespierre's final words were, "So falls a revolution."
So falls a revolution.
Yeah.
Yo. So falls a revolution. What did he mean? His dying words. It's like that guy, Rosebud. What? I have to sit and wait 2 hours.
Find out what Rosebud is his sled. Spoilers.
Don't. We're going to put in a bit of a chicky, 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 chicky.
Yeah,
When he
spoilers.
said that.
No, we're not. We're not.
So falls a revolution. Did he mean the revolution's over? Or was he a
Yeah,
revolution?
I think that's. I think this is-
wonderful.
anyway, that's my fact is that those were his final words.
Yeah, I have no reason to doubt that, and I do think there's strange ambiguity, because like when you know you're gonna die, I think grammar sometimes slips, and he meant to say,
I mean, maybe it was
I
in
meant
French.
revolutionary.
Maybe "so falls a revolution" makes more sense in French. Maybe it's the translating it, because
Bloody
he
hell.
definitely didn't say it in English, right?
So falls a revolutionary. Duh. Shame.
Yeah, yeah.
So, it's a very unrevolutionary thing to keep removing a beret when you
I
you
know,
remember the
particularly
dead.
since what you've done with the pom pom is you slowly moved it around, and now it's right on the front in the middle.
Le pom pom.
Level.
Yes, I think Robespierre said, "So falls a revolution." Indeed, and he was just jittering because he was nervous that he was going to die. He meant to say, "Thus falls a revolutionary."
Ah,
That would have been good.
pretty good, yeah.
Copywriting, it matters.
It does matter. It does matter.
change the world,
Unfortunately, it's all nonsense.
Oh, you-
Maximilien Robespierre, we don't know what his final words are because while he was in the Hôtel de Ville,
Because they're going, weak, 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 weak. Can we release it? No, not yet. Weak, weak.
but then his
How
last
about
words would
now?
be, "No, not yet." No, just wait a few years.
His final words were, no, not yet.
Yeah, if we could just wait just a couple of years, I'll be back tomorrow.
So we don't know what his bloody
Yeah, we don't know
words.
what he's fine because while he was in the Hôtel de Ville, these government forces raided it at 2:30 in the morning, and there was shooting and there was argument and everything else, and Robespierre was ultimately found on the floor with his lower jaw shot off.
Oh!
So a portion of his lower jaw shot off, and kind of in a catatonic sort of state. And
Oh, my.
the story is that he may have tried to commit suicide. There's also a story that perhaps one of the military guards shot him. It's also possible that they shot him to remove his jaw, being a famous orator. They were afraid that maybe he would say something on the guillotine. But they arrest everybody and they take them off to a thing, and it becomes quite obvious to them. They think he's dead at first, but it becomes quite obvious to them that he's breathing and he's listening and he's in a great amount of pain.
Oh.
And they get a doctor to come and to pull the shattered teeth out and to fill his cheek with wadding and then to tie a bandage around his face, just trying to kind of hold him together for his eventual execution. And the whole time, other people from the parliament are coming in and they're telling him exactly what they think of him. Ah, look at you, Robespierre, you piece of shit, And he's lying there, kind of ragged, breathing his last. And they're convinced that he will have known what these guys were saying to him. And then they get him onto the guillotine there, and the executioner rips the bandage off, and he screams in kind of primal agony. And they chop his head off, and so we don't actually know what his last.
What?
And we don't know whether the
terrible
executioner. Yeah, we don't know whether the executioner ripped the bandage off because he wanted to hurt him. Wanted to embarrass him. Wanted to show the crowd this hideous monster that he'd become. Like the French are quite big on the symbolism of the whole thing. Oh, he couldn't speak at the end, and he was a disfigured monster, and revealing his real self as this hideous beast.
Oh!
Yeah, and then
Dramatic.
was the executioner doing that, showing the crowd just who he'd become, removing the mystery from him, or was the executioner aware that perhaps the bandages might stop the guillotine and make the execution worse? Yeah, was he trying to? So we don't really know. We don't really know the history of it, but we definitely do not know what Robespierre's last words were.
Oh, shame that because
Yeah.
the poor bugger had no jaw.
Yeah.
Oh, that is macabre.
It is, isn't it? It is. There you are.
Wow. And yeah, what I loved about, like, there were some historians going, they just stormed the Bastille, and then it was the butcher. The butcher got his knife and
Yeah.
got a noble guy and chopped his head off and That's when it turned macabre. That's when the bloods... And it's almost like this bloodlust did kick in. Oh, it's horrible.
Well, as I say, it was driven by Robespierre because after that, the terror it sort of stops after the death of him because, a lot of the parliamentarians were going along with the terror because they were under his sway, and some of them didn't want it at all. They didn't like the fact that it was getting out of control. Like 18,000 people is a lot of people to go under a guillotine. That's a lot of people. 18,000.
The Madame was working hard.
So one of the interesting things is they just before that period, they adjusted the guillotine and they changed the shape of the blade. And the rumor is it was Louis XVI himself who said that if it was a triangular shaped blade, you know how it's got that angle, it might execute quicker. And one of the first people to ever be executed under a triangular blade was, in fact, Louis XVI. The number of times that stuff happens, never invent an implement of death because there's a good chance, historically speaking, that you're going to be the one that you're going to be a recipient thereof. Yeah. That's what they say about the brazen bull. I don't know if you've ever heard of the brazen bull.
Oh, if you terrible thing.
Yeah, if you want to go down a really dark period of history, it's a
Chinese,
brass bull. No, I think it's Persian or Middle. Yeah, but it's a brass bull that's hollow on the inside, and they put a person inside it, and then they light the fire under the belly. And then the person, obviously, the brass bull gets hot, so you can't put your hands anywhere. And then it starts getting so hot that it sears the flesh off of the palms of your hands and your knees and etc. And you cook eventually alive. And the rumor is so horrified was the king with the invention of this creation, the brazen bull, that he put the inventor inside of it as its first victim. Yeah. So
my!
That's the historical story. Yeah.
Dante's Inferno would call that contrapasso. You do it now, it happens to you.
Yeah. I mean, history is littered with examples like that. So don't invent ways to kill people. Sure. It's not cool, bro. It's not cool.
Man, let's go on that hippie trail, man.
Yeah. Chill out, bro. Yeah. This brazen bull thing you're building in your garage, bro. It's not cool. It's not cool.
Cool.